On today's show, the Milwaukee Bucks Summer League campaign is underway, and yes, they are, of course, undefeated after a big win over the Denver Nuggets. A big second half led by MarJon Beauchamp, which is reason for optimism. He was sensational after halftime. There were also some decent moments from Andre Jackson Jr. Nico Mannion was on fire as well. So we've got plenty of things to discuss from the Summer League opener in Vegas. But as we mentioned, the Bucks got off to a win. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and sometimes on the weekend when it comes to Summer League, and also find my work over at ESPN alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden, for today's episode that is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And as always, we thank you for joining us and listening and watching wherever you are during the week or on the weekends when we do a little bonus podcasting. We appreciate the support. Drop your comments and thoughts from today's Summer League opener. And if you're a MarJon Beauchamp optimist, you went on a bit of a roller coaster ride, but it came home strong, and you're probably feeling pretty good about what you saw against the Denver Nuggets tonight. So drop a comment, a like, subscribe, follow, rate, and review the show. We appreciate it. It's free to do, and it helps us. And we can laugh about it a little bit, Frank, because it's Summer League, and this is exactly what happens, and you're going to have some probably pretty horrific moments, and then hopefully, and not always, but hopefully you get some glimmers of positivity and excitement that you can walk away from. And I sent this in our DM. I said halfway through the third quarter, the Bucks were down by double digits, and I was just really, really depressed about watching Summer League basketball at that point because there weren't too many positives. Beauchamp wasn't playing well. You didn't see a lot from the draftees at that point in time. And then a 16-2 run, and they carry it on through the fourth quarter and pick up a win. And you really did see little bits and pieces from all the guys that you wanted to, but specifically MarJon Beauchamp, because he did start very rough. There was some bricks. He didn't look like he was totally engaged at the start, but once it came out after halftime, he was awesome and ends up putting together a pretty nice line. And the efficiency looks fine because he was 2 for 9 at halftime.
Yeah, it's funny to look back on last year, right? I think the thing that struck me most thinking about his performance last year was it almost seemed like they wanted him in a complementary role last year.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of speculated like maybe that's just because they want him to get used to like the role that he'll actually have, like if he plays actual NBA basketball in his rookie year. And I think what we saw was, him standing around in the corner a lot, him taking some dribble handoffs, really struggling. Whenever he was drove to the basket last year, it felt like he just didn't have like the strength and ball handling. Like it just seemed like he would get stripped. And you still had his moments. I think the 3-point shooting last year was like kind of what salvaged his summer league, which is weird because that was kind of the big question. It felt like he did a lot of other stuff offensively, like garbage man, transition, all this other stuff. But the question was, would he be able to shoot? And he actually shot, well in summer league, but kind of was like, like didn't really pop. Like athletically didn't really pop the way that maybe we would have liked. And so obviously coming into the second year, I mean, looking back last year, obviously has the flashes during the regular season. I think we didn't really ever talk about it much, but I mean, look at his like G League stats. Like he didn't really he put up, I think he averaged like 19 points a game, but like, didn't shoot the ball particularly well in Wisconsin, with the Herd. Didn't look like, okay, this is, a first round pick who's better than being in the G League or anything like that. So I think, this summer, again, we never want to, always the caveat, right? Like don't make too much of summer league, like, for better or worse, right? If guys are like awful, then like, okay, that's not a good sign, but
right.
You got to kind of calibrate, right? It's just summer league, whatever it is, it's a chance to kind of work on things. So, I mean, I think for me, like coming in, I was like, I wanted him to be more aggressive, right? And we saw, I mean, even in the regular season for the Bucks, like felt like Bud and the coaching staff really like coached him up, be like, look for your shot, like don't be afraid. I mean, he averaged almost 8 3-pointers per 36, which is a lot. He wasn't bashful, but I think over the course of the season, in the regular season, we saw him like get a little more comfortable attacking the basket. And I think, last year summer league, he started really slowly in most games. This year, super slow start, bricks thrown off the backboard, some ugly stuff. So I think he started like 1 for 7 or something like that. So to kind of like settle down and for the rest of the game, especially after halftime, begin to look much more like the sophomore, more comfortable guy that like knows what he can do, can get to his spots. I think showed a better balance of, didn't really rely on the 3-point shot. I mean, the 3-point shot really wasn't there for him tonight, and kind of scored in spite of that. 2 for 7, hit a late one to kind of put the game away. But 7 for 11 on 2-pointers, which, again, the 3-point shooting, like there's going to be some variance there, but I think that was, encouraging. Actually, the fact that he got up a good number of twos and he shot a very good percentage, 3 for 5 from the line. And looking at the stats as well, I think we know over his turnover. I think 3 turnovers, only 2 assists, right? But a plus 15 overall in 32 minutes. So I think, again, like he didn't quite, I don't think he's like at too good for summer league level. But shaking off that rough start, looking much, much, much better in the second half, looking much more comfortable putting the ball on the floor, attacking, and not just being a spot up guy. I think those are the kinds of things you wanted to see from MarJon here in his second summer league. And again, to me, it's like you don't win rotation minutes in summer league or anything like that, right? But I think it's all about like building confidence, building skills, getting some reps in game action, and then being able to translate that then to training camp in the fall, right? And I think for MarJon, that's the key. Again, we've talked about it. Like, look at this roster. Like, there is no like big physical wing stopper to defend like big small forwards on this roster right now. Like, Wes Matthews hasn't been signed, barring changes the roster, like probably won't be signed. I hope as a West stan that he'll kind of just hang out, and then maybe it'll be a lopsided trade and the Bucks can bring him in at a later date. But that to me, that's an obvious question. We'll talk about Andre Jackson here in a moment too. Like some of these young guys, Chris Livingston, hard to say like, oh, like we're going to find the guy that's going to defend Jason Tatum in summer league as a rookie or even a second year guy. But again, like there's a role to be had here as far as just like a regular season guy that can eat up minutes as a strong wing defender. And the more guys between MarJon, Andre Jackson, the more guys that can like at least kind of start to look the part would be nice. So I think for MarJon though, I think the offensive game in particular, obviously taking a big step forward from what we saw a year ago. And hopefully he'll just continue to do this game in and game out here during summer league, and he'll have a quick turnaround here to Saturday night. Hopefully he'll be able to do it again. And more of the second half stuff, less of the first half stuff, more of the second half stuff.
Yeah, and it might have been, and he certainly referenced this in an on-court interview after the game, saying that, we haven't played together, and I know it's the same with every team, and there can be some scrappy stuff in summer league. But to your point about last year, when we were discussing, I remember, as you mentioned that, about the fact that he was playing off the ball a lot. And I think naturally, if you're a fan, you want him to have the ball in his hands because you want to see him take over and see what he can do. But to start the game, it was mostly Nico Mannion, and it was actually Andre Jackson Jr. who felt like he had the ball in his hands more than Beauchamp. And then maybe there was just an over-eagerness to fire up some of those shots, and they were just bad shots. And he got blocked there once as well. So it was a tough start, but he looked more assertive in the second half. Defensively, he was disruptive, was able to come up with a couple of steals. And then I think overall in transition, that's where he's going to be at his best. And when I podcasted with Justin yesterday, we referenced the 3-point shot, and he was 2 for 7. And I kind of said, I don't really care. Like, if he has nights where he hits 4 for 5 from 3, I'll say, okay, but we've seen that. We actually saw that at the NBA level. The one thing I really want to see is him be physical, get to the free throw line, and be able to finish through contact. He had a couple of and ones tonight, which were nice finishes. I don't know if we saw that last year. I don't think that we did. And I just had a look as you were talking. And I know it's difficult at the NBA level because a lot of the times he was kind of camped in the corner there, but only 1.9 free throw attempts per 36. So he had the 5 tonight. And obviously he finished a couple of those, so it would have been more. So I think his ability to draw contact and actually look like a physical player makes you feel pretty good if you're a Bucks fan, for potentially some development there as well. So it was nice to see him play well in the second half because I don't know how you feel about this, Frank, but sometimes he does look like he can get down on himself. That's how I see it anyway. So he looked like he was a little bit frustrated in the first half and then maybe pushing a little bit. I don't know. He does seem like an emotional guy that way.
Yeah, and I think you see it sometimes. Like, I just felt like after the All-Star break last year, like when he did get into games, it was typically not obviously in, real leverage parts of the games. A lot of it was garbage time. It just kind of felt like there was like a level of resignation to his game, like kind of just like,
Sure.
okay, like the coaches want me to shoot. So like kind of putting them up, but not necessarily always playing with like, like a ton of conviction.
Yeah.
And again, like a rookie season's a long season. Like you kind
Yeah.
of knew, I think at that point, like the Bucks at full health, like there wasn't minutes for him, right? Which really wasn't his fault. And I don't. Again, like we've had some discussions about like should Bud have played him more or less? When did he have opportunities? When he didn't? But like once Chris Middleton and Joe Ingles were healthy, and Pat Connaughton was healthy, and there's a lot of guys on that roster. Wes Matthews was healthy and started to play, and obviously like when you're trying to win games, and they were gunning for the number one seed, and they got it. That's not obviously that's a hard time to be kind of just throwing a rookie in there ahead of those guys that have those guys earned opportunities, right? And so I again, this is a kind of, I feel like an old man saying like, oh well, rookies got to earn their minutes, but I don't know. I don't feel too bad about it because I don't think there was like probably some. I think I saw enough from MarJon to think like I don't think there was some scenario where he was gonna like get a bunch of minutes in the second half and suddenly be like a playoff contributor and like the
He
answer.
felt like he was an off season away.
Yeah. Like I don't think there was some version of the world where he becomes the guy that defends Jimmy Butler first round of the playoffs and is the solution to that or whatever. So again, it's a process. Nobody likes to hear that, but I think coming to year 2 now, I mean, we've talked about this, the idea of it's again year 2, year 3 at the latest. Like you gotta show something, right? And you really got to make kind of big strides. And again, he's the guy I think of the young guys in the roster. I mean, I view it as like a portfolio. Like I don't know who necessarily is going to pop from this group, but they need a guy to, again, it still feels like, especially for the rookies, right? To say that you're going to get a top 8 playoff rotation guy from a second rounder is a pretty tall order. But with MarJon, I mean, he's a former first round pick. It's year 2, right? You would hope that by springtime that he would be legitimately challenging for a top 8 rotation spot. And, we'll see if he's ready to be a consistent playoff performer, but I hope we're not, sitting in the playoffs and him not playing and everybody feeling like, he's just not ready. Right. Because at some point you gotta be able to play. And he's turning 23 relatively soon. So it's not like he's the youngest guy. He's had kind of a weird development arc with COVID and everything like that. But, I think his time isn't, to say his time is now is maybe overstating it a little bit, but definitely there's an opportunity here. And so hopefully he sees it here in Vegas and he keeps it going into training camp, and we'll see what happens thereafter, right? It may require injuries and things like that, but again, feels like at some point he's gonna get an opportunity.
It would be genuinely, and I try to be optimistic anyway, but it would be genuinely exciting a little bit though, because you talk about the strange preparation that he had sort of leading into being drafted, and it's probably why ultimately he was a pick 24, but I know there were certainly stages where he was looked at as a higher prospect than that. But because of the journey that he took to get there, if he does now have 1 year, learn some lessons, first full off season with an NBA franchise, and then makes a leap, or looks like he's ready to make a leap, that might get you a little bit excited if you're a Bucks fan, because I know there is going to be plenty of positivity about Beauchamp, and we're here for it all. Because again, the second half was awesome. I might have got a little bit too excited at the end of this summer league game, but I did put in now DM that it was the most exciting 15 minutes of Bucks summer league basketball in history. Now I know that Giannis played summer league and did some cool stuff, but we weren't really sure what we were seeing there at this point. So we had a number of guys, and one of the guys that did some cool stuff that had me out of my seat was Andre Jackson Jr. We can talk about him coming up next after we talk about FanDuel Sportsbook, our sponsor of today's show. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. That's $200 you can spend on betting everything from the money line to the over and under to who you think is going to be who's going to hit the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly as well. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you can also have a little look at Summer League as well. And the Bucks and the Suns are coming up Is this tomorrow? I think it's tomorrow. Bucks and the Suns. Bucks minus 2.5.
Let's run it back, Kane.
Oh yeah, we love it. Weekend back-to-back summer
Saturday
league.
Night Fever. Saturday Night Fever.
And you know that I'm in preseason form, by the way, because I think I said all week the Bucks were playing the Nets today, so you can imagine my shock when I turned on the TV and they were playing the Denver Nuggets. But anyway, sign up today. And
the word Nets is in the word Nuggets, so I mean, like
that is very true.
And
sign up today.
And apostrophe ets. Nets, Nuggets, Nets, same thing.
FanDuel's going to be disappointed with this. Head to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. As we just mentioned, the Summer League continues to roll on. Bucks and the Suns coming up on Saturday nights. As far as I can see, that one looks like, is it an 8-9 p.m. Eastern time tip-off? So it's a little Saturday night action. There's nothing better to do in Milwaukee, not Summerfest or anything like that, the final night of Summerfest. I'm sure everyone will be at home watching the Bucks and the Suns, but we'll have it covered right here on Locked On Bucks. So make sure you stick with us. Andre Jackson Jr., the other player, one of the notable players that we were all looking forward to seeing tonight, pick 36 from the draft. And by the way, they did make his signing official. The Bucks just announced that here in the last hour or so as we're recording this podcast. So I don't know how to describe this, but it felt like Andre Jackson Jr. was completely as advertised tonight. There was some awesome moments of athleticism. And I know, and we say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek because you're talking about an MVP, but if you looked at the highlights package, there was stuff that you're like, that looks like Russell Westbrook. And you did see a few of those moments tonight, particularly with a couple of just monster blocks that he had, particularly back-to-back blocks on Peyton Watson, who is actually a good player for the Nuggets, a two-way guy with that organization as well. We saw a nice baseline off the dribble, two-hand dunk as well. So that's the massive positive. And if you're a Bucks fan, there hasn't been too many guys that are making those types of plays on the roster over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So there was positive stuff to look at with Andre Jackson Jr., but then there was also the jump shot was as advertised, and he was 0 for 4 from 3. Didn't really, outside of transition plays, look like a guy that is going to be able to have a big impact from scoring the ball or certainly shooting the basketball. So a mixed bag for Andre Jackson Jr., but I don't think that we came into Summer League expecting him to score a whole bunch of points, but we did come in hoping that there'd be some highlight dunks and maybe some athletic plays that would be enough to get you excited.
Yeah, and he's I don't know what we need to kind of hopefully finalize on like the preferred nickname for Andre Jackson. I've just been using shorthand AJJ, although I don't want to say AJJ. I've seen Ajax, which when I see Ajax, I always think Ajax, the Dutch soccer team, which it's definitely not going to be Ajax for his nickname. Andre 3000, we've heard, right, for the Outcast singer. So there's a lot of different options that we can go with. But yeah, all action Jackson maybe might be another option because it seems like he's kind of all action. He definitely just does stuff.
Yes, he does.
And I thought like Peyton Watson, he has a 4-year, $12 million contract. Kane. He's no two-way guy.
Was last year.
He's a legit player. They're expecting him to kind of fill in and be maybe a rotation guy in Denver, and he 23 points to 12 shots. Like you kind of see why. But yeah, I mean like the start of that kind of block sequence, Watson like kind of blew by Andre Jackson, and then he recovers and gets the block. 8 fouls for Andre today. MarJon had 6, so definitely making use of that liberal foul allotment in Vegas. So yeah, I don't know. I want to kind of take the full Andre Jackson experience in before I kind of make any kind of big sweeping generalizations of what he's going to be. Can you play a guy that doesn't shoot with Giannis? I don't know, right? I mean, I think it's obviously going to be hard. But again, as a rookie second rounder, you probably weren't looking to anybody in that spot to be coming in and playing a bunch of minutes, in crunch time or something like that. So we'll see, right? I mean, it's funny. I mean, the only guy that like plays like him that has played for the Bucks is Thanasis, but I feel like he's more of the like fully realized version of what Thanasis sort of has wanted to be. Although with 8 fouls today, that maybe rings true of what Thanasis has been in terms of just getting called for lots of fouls. But just a guy that isn't going to shoot, but is eager to kind of bring the ball up, run dribble handoffs, and make plays. I think again he's got definitely better passing instincts certainly than Thanasis, but
a couple of nice passes,
yeah. And I thought the hit ahead to MarJon on
Mm-hmm.
that outlet, that was kind of a good example. But I mean that's the thing that he that's in his package, right? So we'll see. If you want to play high octane transition basketball, you kind of have to do that with him because of the limitations. And it's not just that he doesn't shoot, but I mean his scoring rate is one of the lowest you're going to find for a guy picked as high as he was, right? I mean, he scored 6 points a game, right? He's super athletic, really good in transition. If you only score 6 points a game, that means you're not doing a bunch of other stuff either, and not really a good free throw shooter. So just looking at a shot, I mean, again, like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like I'm banking on that shot coming around anytime soon. So I think the question is like, how do you use him and weaponize the things that he can do to kind of overcome that? And again, if Giannis is on the bench at some point in the next couple of years when he's hopefully showing what he can do in terms of doing other stuff, then maybe that's where you start to kind of get him some minutes. But yeah, again, I mean, I think you sort of as advertised, and I think physically the tools are there to I think again sometimes like I thought MarJon, I was expecting him to look more athletic last year with Andre Jackson. Like he looked as athletic as we kind of were expecting him to look, which is definitely encouraging.
Yeah, and with Jackson Jr. as well, it's kind of interesting, and because it's probably just something that's going to happen in Summer League because we're not really sure what his role would even look like during the regular season. But yeah, he did, as you just mentioned, and as we probably expected, looked best when he was getting the rebound. And like, all right, let's push in the half court. He made some nice passes. You already mentioned the one to Beauchamp there. So there was enough there to at least be excited about Jackson Jr. while also seeing some of the things that we probably expected. A couple of other guys I wanted to, and by the way, Peyton Watson, if you're listening, Frank tried to correct me, and I just went over the top again. I don't know why I thought he was a two-way guy, but you're right, he wasn't. No disrespect, Peyton.
He barely played at UCLA as a freshman. It's a really weird situation. He played 400 minutes in college because he like couldn't get off the bench at UCLA. He was a highly touted prospect. Then he comes to the NBA, gets drafted in the second round, and only played 200 minutes last year. So he's kind of a funky prospect. But I mean, again, you saw some of the promise today in terms of what he's doing. But again, enough Peyton Watson talk. Who cares about Peyton Watson?
No, I just see if he was listening. I did just wanted to correct. We're accountable here on Locked On Bucks. I wanted to correct myself there, and I thought he had a decent night, other than just getting stuffed twice in a row in embarrassing fashion by our man Andre Jackson Jr. But if he had a third attempt, he might have been able to throw it down.
Shades of Giannis as a rookie against the Sixers, blocking 2 shots incredibly. I think those were both in transition. They were like kind of incredible recovery plays. But I don't know how many Giannis Andre Jackson comparisons we're going to be making, but that's at least one.
Well, we will wait and see. All right, a couple of guys we want to get to still. Mannion, Gortman. We'll chat about some of those players next, and any other takeaways from the Summer League opener. We'll get to that next. So, particularly to start this game, and I don't even mean this in a bad way, Frank, but we spoke about MarJon Beauchamp, and he was sort of playing off the ball and kind of just floating around. And a big reason for that was because Nico Mannion was really the only guy that looked like he was able to function in the half-court offense, get his own shot, got downhill on repeat, and in the end, had a pretty nice night. 16 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a couple of steals there, 7 for 14 from the field. He did not shoot well from the three-point line, but he's interesting. He's a guy that you may have seen with the Warriors organization a little bit, and I actually do believe the Warriors still have his rights, which is like so strange to me. I think they extended a qualifying offer, a two-way qualifying offer, but it's strange to me, Frank, why that happens and then he doesn't play for the Warriors. like how does that? I don't know. There's some strange rules out there, but just basically for anyone getting too excited about what you may have seen there, anyway, the Warriors at least as far as I could read, still retain his rights, Frank. And I don't know why he's playing for the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of these weird things about like constructing summer league rosters, because especially at the point guard position, like you really want to have like an adult in the room who can kind of run an offense and like be competent, because if you don't have that, like it makes everybody else's job a lot harder. So I think that's why we saw him starting this game, even though you have Omari Moore, who's on a two-way, and Jazian Gortman, who we thought might have been on a two-way, but appears he's not on a two-way. And I thought he was an Exhibit 10 guy. It sounds like he doesn't even have an Exhibit 10 at this point, which is basically a camp contract that can be converted to a two-way and has some guaranteed money associated with it. So we'll talk about him in a moment, but yeah, I mean, it's like kind of these things like Moore plays 8 minutes, Gortman plays 12 minutes. It's like I'm a lot more interested in those guys than I am in seeing what Nico Mannion can do, because again, I mean, he's played in Europe the last couple of years, Italian national team, Ginger on the Italian national team, Dante DiVincenzo, like he's got to be recruiting Dante to be the next guy up there to join the Italian national team from here the United States, but yeah, I mean, he played pretty well, I mean, I didn't, he's kind of weird. I remember seeing him in Arizona. He always struck me as kind of like small, but I mean, he's 6'3". He had that pretty impressive like driving dunk in the half court, which I didn't really think he had in him. So I don't know. I mean, it's sort of this thing. It's like, do I really want to see a lot of Nico Mannion like for the Bucks Summer League team? Like, not really. Not really that interested in him, because he's not going to be a guy that obviously is going to be a part of this team in the regular season. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more of Gortman and Omari Moore as Summer League rolls on. But again, the flip side is like if those they're both rookies. Mannion is certainly much more experienced as a pro, so there may be some compromises in terms of how the offense runs. So we'll see. But yeah, Nico Mannion trying to be the adult in the room. But I don't know, man. Kane, I want to see the kids. I want to see those kids play.
Me too. Yeah, we didn't see a lot. And you'll notice we're probably not going to talk a lot about Chris Livingston tonight. He kind of just was out there. I didn't see too much worth discussing tonight, but let us know what you thought, if you saw anything that you liked from Chris Livingston.
I mean, I think this is kind of like the thing we don't like. What is Chris Livingston, right? I mean, he's like 6'7". He's got an NBA body. Like his athletic testing like looks like he's a pretty good athlete, but like, what's his deal? I mean, I kind of joked on Twitter, like, I don't know exactly what his sort of differentiated skill is, but I don't know that there's anything he's like bad at. He's like, and he's still very young and he's got this great pedigree. But as we talked about on draft night, reading some of the scouting reports, he's kind of a guy that like matured early and like kind of like beat up on people in high school. And, I think the question is like, can he can his overall game kind of catch up? Does he have a skill? Like, I think he was a 30% 3-point shooter in college last year. I mean, to me, that's the swing skill for him, right? Like, I don't think he's a guy that's ever going to be like a dynamic one-on-one guy necessarily, but I think all indications like from the interviews we've seen, I mean, he seems like a hard worker. I think Sam Vecini in his write-up called him a grinder. So, at least he's not a guy, even with his 5-star recruit pedigree, that is necessarily like resting on his laurels. Like, I think he probably realizes like he's got to be a dirty work guy. He's got to be a defensive guy if he's going to have a future as a professional. And, hopefully he's another, highly touted Kentucky recruit that Coach Cal just sort of doesn't use properly and ends up becoming, a very good pro. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, 7 points on 4 shots, 6 rebounds today. I mean, like he started, right? It seems like the Bucks, obviously they're, I think expectation is they're going to give him an NBA contract. And so they obviously see something in him, and so hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that here in Vegas. But certainly for a 19-year-old kid, NBA body already, and we talk about like big wings and MarJon in that regard. Certainly Livingston is an even bigger a bigger boy than MarJon is at this point. Maybe not the same type of athlete, but certainly physically he's definitely brings some tools.
All right, last point for me from the Summer League opener, Taco Fall. I don't think he needs to start the next game. And the one thing I will say of it, because I don't really like, it's this guy is. I was watching him get up and down the floor, and for a guy that is as big as Taco Fall is, like, he's an incredible athlete, but he's too
Yeah.
big, and it
Can't catch a
just.
basketball. Like, yeah.
I mean, and it's sometimes it wasn't his fault. Some of the passes were coming around his knees, and it's like, what do you want this big guy to do in traffic? So it wasn't all his fault, but it just didn't work out. And particularly if you look at the way, and you already mentioned some of the fouls with the Bucks defense, but they were playing aggressive defense. And then what's Taco Fall supposed to do? He can't be out there on the perimeter. It's just not going to work. But he played 16 minutes and was minus 17 there. Got to the free throw line a little bit, but did not score. So I'm curious to see whether he continues to have a role on this team, or maybe they'll go to some of the other players, maybe Drew Timmy, who seemed like Timmy had some fans in the crowd by the sounds of it. He's like, I don't watch like a whole lot of college basketball, but he was like somewhat of a cult figure, wasn't he? I think so.
I mean, anytime you have a white guy with, creative facial hair, who wears a headband and scores a ton of points. I mean, he's, an all-American caliber player, right?
Right.
You're always going to get a little bit of that cult status. And I was kind of curious. I mean, I had no idea really what to make of him. I was like, I mean, it wouldn't have shocked me if he had like started as like an undersized center in this game. He's clearly a lot better than, I mean, he's clearly more skilled than Taco Fall, right? But I mean, he does have an Exhibit 10, so the Bucks saw enough in him to give him some money, even if there's no, guarantee of a two-way or anything sort of at the end of this. So, it's kind of ironic, right? Like, we tried to read into the Andre Jackson pick is like, oh, this is totally different type of mindset in terms of, or Adrian Griffin, now he wants athletes and blah blah blah, and then it's like they give a 10 an Exhibit 10 to Drew Timmy, who's like sort of the anti Andre Jackson as far as college. I mean, both super successful college players, but certainly not because of athleticism, for Timmy's sake. But yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, like, I almost didn't even realize until the game was over, but just Wigginton didn't play. Hugo Besson, who was hurt during the regular season, or to kind of finish the season with a hip injury in France, he didn't play. I mean, I saw those guys, were in the practices. I don't know how much Hugo Besson can even play right now. And then I think, AJ Green, I think we heard, had some kind of knock or something. But it's almost like I almost don't even really need to see those guys. I know AJ Green can shoot. I didn't think he was even that impressive in Vegas last year, which is part of why we were so skeptical of him. But I almost don't even really need to see AJ Green in Vegas. Like, I don't feel like I'm going to see him develop some kind of dynamic, off the dribble game or something like that. And Wigginton, like, I mean, we've seen a lot of Lindell over the past few years, even, for the Bucks. So yeah, I'm looking ahead. I mean, I agree. Let's see 0 Taco Fall. Just play small. We saw some zone. We saw some switching, things like that from Adrian Griffin. Obviously, we expect more creativity and things like that. How much, what they do in summer league reflects that? Like, we'll see. But yeah, we don't need to see any more Taco Fall. Whatever. Let's just play weird. Let's get funky with it. Let's see the guys that you actually, I think want to see play basketball. And I thought, yeah, I mean, for me, Moore and Gortman. Gortman, I thought, like, Gortman had a really nice game. I think he kind of gave them a shot in the arm early. Seems to have a pretty nice little off the dribble game. Has some burst, and certainly as an overtime elite guy, he's kind of a mystery Bucks type of player. Seems to be a very athletic guy. But we'll see. And again, like, so far, it doesn't seem like he even has an Exhibit 10. But there was some thought that he had a two-way, but based on everything I'm kind of poking around, doesn't sound like he's got a two-way or even an Exhibit 10 yet. But obviously they wanted to see what he can do. He played more than Omari Moore, who does have a two-way with the Bucks right now. So Gortman's an interesting candidate, and obviously Kane, anybody that plays point guard or vaguely looks like a point guard is very interesting, because the Bucks have none of those right now. So yeah, hopefully we'll continue to see Gortman and Moore get more playing time here as Vegas kind of continues on.
Just quickly, while we're mentioning players, don't need to go into it too much, but Tyler Cook as well. He's only 6'8", but if they wanted to go small, he actually had 4 offensive rebounds, was plus 24 in 24 minutes, and was on the floor and came up with some big plays, a big offensive rebound off a missed free throw and put back. So I thought he was pretty good as well. He's a little bit older. He's 26. So I was just looking it up there. And
did he play for the Bulls last year? Am I making that up? I thought I remember.
Honestly don't know.
I thought he played I thought when the Bulls were like super banged up that yeah, he played for the Bulls in 21-22. Okay. Yeah, I thought I remember him getting thrown in and having to defend Giannis at some point, which is like, hey, thanks for showing up. Here's your NBA contract. Now go defend Giannis Antetokounmpo. Good luck.
And the AJ Green injury, I think he might have tweaked his back carrying his money bags to his house because they made that deal official today as well. So shout out to AJ Green. All right, Summer League rolls on tomorrow, Saturday night in the US, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. Bucks and Suns, a rematch of the 2021 NBA Finals. We can't wait for that. So keep it locked on Bucks, and we'll have everything that happens from this game and hopefully some more positive things to discuss. So thanks for joining us today. Hopefully you enjoyed some Bucks basketball back on the TV, and we'll speak to you guys next time.